But nowhere is the problem causing more concern than in Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Jim?
Robin, when you talk about bridges, you have to talk about the city of Bridges, Pittsburgh. There are some 1,700 bridges in that city and the surrounding area of Allegheny County. The reason? Well, the mountainous terrain and the three rivers that run through the area and merge at the north end of the city, the Allegheny, Ohio, and Monongahela. It has been said that you can't drive 1 mile in any direction from Pittsburgh without crossing at least one bridge. Pittsburgh became known as the city of bridges around the 19th century with the help of bridge designer John Roebling, known to most as the man responsible for New York's Brooklyn Bridge. Roebling began his design practice in Pittsburgh. In the late 1920s, Pittsburgh went through a bridge building boom. 43 major bridges were built in 4 years at a cost of $24 million. According to Professor Stephen Finvez of the Civil Engineering Department of Carnegie Mellon University, the bridge crisis is not new. Bridges have been repaired, rebuilt, and replaced for the last 40 to 50 years. Finvez says the main change is that the initiative has shifted from the local to the federal level. He says it has gotten to the point where the local government looks to the county for funds, the county looks to the state, and the state goes to Washington when there's a crisis. Professor Finvez also told us that in the early part of the century, bridges in Pittsburgh were replaced every 30 years. The vast majority of those 1,700 bridges in Allegheny County now are at least 50 years old. Robin?
The signs of corrosion and old age aren't readily visible to the general public. The warning signals usually can only be seen from underneath the road bed. When you take a visit underneath an old bridge, as producer Ken Whitty did in Pittsburgh last week, the lesson can be alarming. He talked with Carl Angeloff, an athletic civil engineer in charge of inspecting all the bridges in the Pittsburgh metropolitan area for the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. This is the Thornburg Bridge, a 51-year-old structure used by 12,000 cars every day. It's rated number 3 on Pennsylvania's critical list. We asked Carl Angeloff, what's the matter with this bridge?
Well, in general, everything is the matter with this bridge. It's generally overall deteriorated to the extent where it needs replaced. You can see behind me the water coming through the deck, which stopped raining about 5-6 hours ago, and the concrete is so deteriorated in the deck that water drains into it and takes a long time to drain out of it. The steel is very deteriorated, a lot of corrosion, a lot of members broken, completely rusted away. And all the concrete substructure members likewise. And over the past year, we put about $100,000 in emergency repairs into this bridge to keep it at the minimum 3-ton load limit. We've had a lot of trouble in the past with large trucks and other vehicles over the 3-ton load limit violating the limit on the bridge. And therefore, that's why we have our 8-foot, 6-inch clearance signs erected at each approach to the bridge to keep off the heavy trucks and prevent a catastrophe from occurring. The estimated life without any further repairs would be maybe a year. And we inspect the bridge every 6 months, and during that time, if anything, we find anything, naturally we'll do emergency repairs to maintain the minimum service of 3 tons. And hopefully, by the time that within a year or so, we'll have enough money to replace the structure. We have around 1,700 bridges in Allegheny County, which is one of the highest concentrations of bridges in the world. Now, of those bridges, further magnifying the problem is the fact that 60% of those bridges were built before 1935, and 75% of the major river crossings were built before 1935. So magnifying the number of bridges we have, it's simply the fact that most of them are just suffering from old age. There are many reasons that a bridge deteriorates. Okay, probably most importantly is water and salt. Salt has a very corrosive effect on steel and concrete members and greatly accelerates bridge deterioration. The inspection of this bridge over the past year cost $60,000. Other bridges larger than this are $150,000, $200,000 is very common. So you see the problem is the enormous expense related to just discovering what deficiencies there are. And once you discover them, you still have to repair them or seek some type of remedial action.
The 63-year-old Wind Gap Bridge has been closed since November 7th for major repairs. It's the second closing in 2 years. Everyone agrees that the bridge needs to be replaced, but a new bridge would cost $3.5 million, and there are no funds. So it's being patched together to last another year or so. Meanwhile, local merchants are furious. The bridge gives the only access to the Wind Gap Shopping Center, and a giant department store is feeling the pinch.
The closing of the bridge has had quite an effect on our business, as it's been closed for over 3 weeks during one of the busiest times of the year for retailing businesses. Our store at Wind Gap gets approximately 30% of the customers shopping from the McKees Rocks area that must use the Wind Gap Bridge to get to our store. These people now have to take a long, detailed detour, which is a tough route from old roads to get to our store, and the time element makes it such that they would probably rather shop at our competitors. The closing of the bridge not only has cost Hills business, it's cost jobs in the area. We have approximately 20 employees less this year than we employed last year at this time due to the lack of business from the closing of the bridge.
Another worn-out bridge, the Sewickley Bridge, spans the Ohio River. 3 years ago, a 1,000-pound concrete slab fell from the bridge sidewalk, so the state removed the sidewalks. A new bridge is planned thanks to the lobbying efforts of local residents like Jack Simpson.
At the present time, it has a weight limit of 3 tons, a speed limit of 10 miles an hour. Big problem with the weight limit of 3 tons and the speed limit of 10 miles is the fact that so much of our heavy fire equipment is located on opposite sides of the river. At the Greater Pittsburgh Airport, we have the snorkel units, which we need sometimes in Sewickley, and can't come across this bridge. The ambulance authority, which is located on the south side of the river, had to strip down some of its ambulances because of the weight limitations on the bridge. The Sewickley Valley Hospital is located on one side of the river, and without the Sewickley Bridge, which is the vital link between this side of the river and the Sewickley Hospital, the people over here can't get to the hospital. The important thing about the airport and the Sewickley Bridge is this: if there is a disaster at the Greater Pittsburgh Airport, the Sewickley Valley Hospital has been designated as the Emergency Disaster Center. The personnel at the Sewickley Valley Hospital has been trained to take care of any disaster. If the bridge is out and we don't have a Sewickley Bridge, the ambulances from Sewickley, the trained personnel from Sewickley cannot get to the airport. Once they are here, they can't return to the Sewickley Valley Hospital without having to go around by about 20 miles. A lot of people can die in that amount of time. And without our bridge, without the only link between the hospital and the airport, we are in serious trouble.
The decay of Pittsburgh's bridges has reached the point that it's become the #1 concern of local politicians. Several have been to Washington to plead for federal help. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation is broke. Recently, a group of Washington officials came to Pittsburgh for an inspection. One of the guides was Allegheny County Commissioner Robert Pierce.
It's just impossible to go anywhere in Allegheny County without crossing a bridge that is going to be torn down or posted or closed in the next decade. And I don't really know what anybody can do about it. We've gone to Washington, I've talked to people, I've pointed out in testimony before Congress that if you would just spend as much money in this country on bridges as you do on one lousy nuclear aircraft carrier a year, you'll solve this problem in 5 years. But we put all this money into other things. And even from a defense standpoint, the first thing that ever happens in any war is you go and you bomb the other country's bridges. Well, we should use some of that money here to take care of our bridges, because if we don't, they don't have to bomb our bridges. They're going to fall down. And that's happening here in Allegheny County. You've seen it, and we see it every day. And it's a national problem, not just affecting us, but what's happening in Allegheny County is going to happen. It's happening now in Nebraska and Iowa and in Kansas. It's going to hit the Sun Belt states in about 10 years. And it's going to hit the rest of this country. And it's just crazy to wait until the bridges fall down.